Hello and welcome back to my Infinity the Game CanCon tournament recap. We've covered the first two rounds already, and now we're heading into round 3, which is the last round of day 1, and we're playing supplies. We'll be playing Tohaa against Vanilla Aleph, piloted by the legendary Dion of Toy Soldier Imports. He's pictured on screen now, and yes, for reference, I am really glad I took this photograph. Dion's an absolute legend and a known presence in sort of just Australian Infinity. He and the rest of the TSI game guys are among the sponsors for the event, and they're just absolutely fantastic. So as a reminder, this is the list that I'm playing for this event. Effectively, I'm functionally single listing it. I don't drop my second list in any game. But some relevant pieces in this game in particular are the presence of the Kamale Paramedic, which is going to give me a specialist that has a specialist bonus in this mission. Otherwise, I've still got the Diplomatic Delegate and Chain of Command at whip sort of 13 and 14 respectively. So I have sort of enough elements to push the buttons necessary in this scenario. I would generally say that supplies, despite the presence of the Paramedic, is kind of an awkward scenario for Tohaa, in that if you're going second, you're going second, and that's its own problem. But hopefully your opponent picks up some buttons and doesn't step on your neck too hard. But if you're going first, it's not easy for Tohaa to kind of like get all of the ground that they want in the scenario. You'd like to move forward and pick up a button and maybe pick up another button and still do damage to your opponent. And although Tohaa play very efficiently, they can't do all of that all at once. You usually have to decide between scenario and aggression if you're going first, unless you have sort of some like very particularly order heavy or order efficient series of options for your first turn. Fortunately, that wouldn't be an issue because this was not the one game that I won the Lieutenant role, and Dion snapped pick first turn with his Marut-led Aleph list. So this is his list approximately. I'm not 100% on the second combat group. I know that it had the Myrmidian in it. I'm not sure if it was Atlanta or something else. I think it was Atlanta, and I'll get into why in a bit. But otherwise, this is an interesting list. So there are some pieces that we've come to find sort of very familiar. There were a lot of Aleph players, by the by, at the event. Across the different sort of sub-factions, OSS, Phalanx, and Vanilla were all represented, but the Marut was probably the single most popular tag, if I had to guess. There are 2 Netrods in this list, not 3, that's fine, 2 Lameds. The proxy setup is just the Engineer and the Sniper. The Engineer is a no-brainer with the Marut because you are supporting your most expensive piece. But this list actually finds the points and the SWC for the Sniper, and Dion is going to use it to fairly good effect. It means that this list has got 2 Snipers and the multi-HMG as offensive/reactive elements. The fact that all of those pieces can fight in active and reactive, because it's Total Reaction Atlanta, it's a Marut, and then the proxy, the fact that they are all good active or reactive pieces means that despite the fact that this is a 12-trooper list, it puts up better AROs than like my Tohaa does, without really compromising anything, because, spoiler alert, all of those pieces also fight like absolute gods in active turn. Probably the weakest of those as active pieces is the BS-13, Mimetism 6, No Wounding Cap, Multi-Sniper Surprise Attack Post-Human. So this list has got like very concentrated, strong active and reactive presence. It's got a single Myrmidion for supporting the Marut, a Denavas hacker. There are a variety of scenarios in the scenario pack that will make use of her. Penthesilea is probably the most auto-include piece that I have seen. I'm not actually 100% sure that she should be. Like, she's almost 30 points, and she's really good, but she's 30 points. Like, I don't think she necessarily needs to be in every list, but she's really good, and I don't begrudge her presence. And in this list, she's fantastic. She's a specialist operative who can run forward, pick up a button, and then get the hell away very, very fast. So this all kind of works kind of well and nicely. Interesting to note as well is the presence of that Dactyl Doctor, which is an expensive doctor, but it is cheaper than a Sophotect, and its primary goal is to stand behind Atlanta and keep her from dying. So this is a concentrated list. It's only 12 troopers, but it has plenty of orders, because it's got the Marut providing effectively 2 quite efficient orders, and I like it. It's not pushing to 15 troopers, but it doesn't need to, and I think it would probably be materially weaker if it did. So this is this is the table that we played on, and it's yet another case of me being really glad that I had the Nickel in particular. Deployment zones here are not the worst, because basically the way that this is being played, I actually really, really like. We had instruction from, this is another one of the Henry Brothers tables. And how we're playing this is these buildings are all infinitely tall unless they have a rooftop. So this building here, this building here, this building here, etc. You can access only the floor that you can actually put models on. You don't need to remove any building floors to pay them as 2 levels. There are ladders and stairwells and all of that kind of jazz. And then you have these like open spaces that see into or out of but not through, but you can hide models kind of like underneath window ledges. They're all quite obvious playable interiors. We're playing those as infinitely tall with those accessible first or second level interiors. And so as a table, it plays really nicely because you have these, like, they're not exactly strong points, but you have these spots that you can get into, but you can also defend. And it's still, what it means is that the table, 100% of the 4x4 foot is playable space. There's no area of the table that is like cordoned off because it's a nothing burger. And you can make those buildings into like sort of defensible positions. You can put hackers and repeaters in there. You can put ferroware in there to project kind of like this threat out. And there are access points. So for example, this building here, there's a doorway there, which would come up these stairwells. There's a stairwell here and there's a ladder here. Plus, potentially a unit could climb or super jump in through these windows. So there are plenty of ways into and out of the building, but they are still like controllable access points, and they're all kind of like at short range. You can defend and hide there if you need to. The reason why I'm really glad to have a Nickel is that this table does the thing that tables sometimes do when there's only so much terrain available, because you had to cart it all up from Melbourne, which is that it basically has a completely blank rear 4 inches of space. My Nickel, you can see it here. It is on the position on the back of the table edge, which means that the closest terrain to the back table edge is these 2 pieces here. It's a huge amount of totally empty space, and I'm really glad I have a sapper sniper, basically. The table is not hugely open in terms of line of fire. In particular, basically, this path up the table is going to be fairly open, fairly like accessible to me with only a little bit of smoke throwing. But Atlanta's going to end up here, and she and the Nickel collectively are going to be able to see a lot of space. The fact that this central building is considered to be infinitely tall helps keep things from getting out of hand and helps the playability of the table a lot. But it is a pretty sniper-heavy table. So Dion has won the role, and he's picked first turn. And once again, this picture has been taken very slightly after beginning of the first turn, and he's sort of just gone ahead and deployed all of his things in a kind of usual way. Of particular interest is the fact I am pretty sure that he deployed both his Marut and his posthumans during the regular reserve step, which is actually totally fine because the Marut, among other things, is going to be serviced by the posthuman. And if there's kind of one place to put her, you may as well put her in that one place. And Aleph these days has some very solid things that can come down as reserve elements. So how is he deployed? The Marut has begun the game hanging out back here with the posthuman behind it. There is a posthuman sniper on this roof here. You can just about see the camouflage marker. Again, look at this lane. This lane is amazing. We've got 2 flash pulse bots in these buildings here, watching sort of fairly long angles, to be honest. The single Myrmidion is on this staircase there. There's not really anything going on in the midfield. And then the reserve drops are going to be Penthesilea back here, and Atlanta. You can see her there. That's total reaction, smoke shooting, kick my ass, Atlanta. For my part, I've defended as best I can. The K1 sniper begins the turn standing here with the Symbiomate watching along this lane. And I'm basically like 90% sure that the Marut is just going to come around and fight me. It could alternatively have come along this direction here, but it would have exposed it to more danger and taken like 3 more orders. And I assume it's going to move along the path of least resistance. I've kind of just tried to build like ferroware strong points as best I can around much of the rest of the deployment zone, and the HMG team has come down over here. And then the Nickel is there. The Nickel has some very long lines of fire, and in particular it can see this exit point there, and a little bit into this building, although it's not really going to be able to see the Marut. We are playing the buildings as C into or out of and not through. So Dion goes first, and his second combo group, as we said, consists of Atlanta and the Myrmidion. And I actually decide to strip orders from that group because Atlanta is very capable of just killing my Nickel in 2 orders. And failing that, the Myrmidion is very capable of laying smoke on the Marut, which will make its job way, way easier. So if I make those two units unable to act, yes, he has a 11, 12 order primary combat group, but I'd much rather deal with that doing its thing than the extreme efficiency of either the Marut being force multiplied by smoke shooting or Atlanta just acing the shit out of my nickel. And that kind of pays off because Atlanta is stuck where she is now. And the Marut doesn't have access to smoke, and it does indeed take the path of least resistance. It moves up and around here, which means that it's engaging the the Sukwale K1 sniper at about 35 inches. Bad news for me is that even though that face-to-face roll has him on 9s and me on 13s, I whip twice, he hits 4 times, and I fail the save. Which means I go wounded and I drop prone and get out of the line of fire. That's not ideal, but it is still better than what would have happened under many other circumstances if I didn't have a symbiote mate, which is that I would have lost a piece almost certainly because those were damage 16 armor piercing rounds. So I'm going to count my blessings that the K1 sniper is alive. I would love for it to, in an ideal world, it might have just won the game itself there. With the Marut trying to roll 9s, if I keep rolling 10s, 11s, 12, 13s, I can wound the damn thing, he has to repair it. Like, that was a potential catastrophic failure state for him. Instead, it goes perfectly. It is what it is. The Marut just pulls back because she's not needed anymore, and Dion is a smart player and knows to keep his tag safe. And then most of the rest of the turn is the Penthesilea adventure. So she can't move this way because the Nickel was watching and would kill her. She's only Mimetism 3, she's only got regular smoke grenades. And Atlanta can't dislodge the Nickel because she's got no orders. So instead, Penthesilea comes around this way, boops in here to pick this up. I think it takes her a couple of goes because she's just whipped 13. And then she ends up basically hanging out here, which is not a perfect location, but it is reasonably tough. And she is tough. And it's kind of Dion's first turn. So I've lost nothing. But he is up a box, and I have to figure out basically a solution to the variety of problems that are facing me. So this is one of those games where, well, firstly, the Libertos will bail me the hell out, but then secondly, the presence of the Sakiel team helps enormously. This like back pocket close assault team is going to go forth and do work. So the first thing we need to do is solve the Atlanta problem. I'm able to actually avoid Atlanta. The Sukwale HMG, who is deployed here, super jumps 2.5 this way and then 2.5 back, doesn't see Atlanta, does see the Dactyl, lights it the fuck up. I think I need 10s to hit at that range, but it might be 16s, and I destroy it. So, no doctor, that's good, single order, clean kill. Dion hadn't seen that line, and I don't blame him, because it was a line that was only available to a super jump model, and I hadn't deployed anything when he deployed his doctor. The fact that the, 2 inches, 2 inches up, 2 inches back. The fact that the Sukwales in this scenario, in this season, get super jump, got me that kill. From here, the Libertos moves forward, and it's spending group 2 orders, and it basically just like runs around here, runs up here, and points a shotgun into the room. And Atlanta blows it up, and he puts 2 shotgun shots into Atlanta, and she goes down and I go down, and that took basically all of the group 2 orders, but I'll take it. That's a super worthwhile trade. Yes, it was order intensive, but an 8-point model just killed a 44-point model. I do still have to deal with the fact that there are some flash pulses on Overwatch, though. And so once again, this is where the just remarkable utility of the tactical officer comes into play. He has lieutenant orders that he spends. He just crawls up to here, and he conjures up smoke in zone of control using mirror ball, which is just fantastic. So down it goes, and then the remainder of the first group's orders can be spent on this fire team. So we have Sakiel, Kael'ta, Kamel, Paramedic, and a McCall, and they have a clear run to get forward. They have to do a little bit of throat smoke throwing. We do a bit of smoke throwing just to get some smoke down in sort of this position here, because there is still the sniper up there, and a bit of smoke down here from the officer again, and the Paramedic moves away around here, and the McCall and Sakiel move their way around here. Now, over the course of the rest of the turn, this will all get rather messy, but basically what will happen is that the Kamel will grab this box and end up back here. And I'm going to have to use some coordinated orders to do this. Command tokens, irregular orders, regular. It's pretty expensive. And the McCall and the Sakiel will launch an attack up this direction. The post-human actually reveals, but gets isolated by Eraser, which kicks the proxy, the post-human, out of it. A post-human that is basically Eraser, by the way, the presence of Eraser against post-humans exploits one of their very few weaknesses. So I Eraser the post-human. I don't have the orders to burn it to death, which I really should have done because my opponent has an engineer, and I should have thought of that. But instead what we do is the Sakiel basically advances on Penthesilea, who has nowhere that she can guts, and I just put viral round after viral round into her until she goes down. The face-to-face models are not perfect, but they're good enough. I take a wound in the process, but we get there, and down she goes. At that point, I have to make a call. I have a few orders left with which I can either advance or retreat. Like 3. I could have pulled back, and I think in retrospect, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I took a play that might have just won me the game outright. I could have been conservative, pulled back, split the link up to be partially in this building, burned the post-human to death just to be sure, and kind of been safe. And that would have been an okay turn, although I would have left Penthesilea's supply crate hanging out right there, which is not necessarily ideal. So instead I went for the big play. As part of some coordinated orders, because I've had to break the link at this point because of the distance, the McCall ends up back here, kind of just watching the post-human. The paramedic ends up back here, going prone, and the Sakiel goes on a one-woman run. And what she's looking to do is run at the Marut, because she's got EM grenades, and the Marut is not in cover relative to her. Now, I did have the option of taking a shot, not at the Marut, but rather at the Mimetism-armed Yudbot right next to it, which would have been hitting on only 11s rather than 14s. Or I could have gone straight for the Marut, but taken the flamethrower arrow. I think, in retrospect, I should have gone for the Yudbot, and I actually kind of asked for a take back on this, which was a stupid thing to do because dice had been rolled, and Dion was right to tell me to piss off. But I went for the Marut. I died to the flamethrower, and I whiffed the EM grenade hit. Had I hit the Marut, I would have also hit the Yudbot, which probably drops it out of commission, which means that the post-human engineer who is hanging out in this building has a long-ass trip to get down to heal the Marut, because the only ways out are this staircase and this door here, as far as I know. And she's doing it through loss of lieutenant. But if I'd just gone for the Yudbot and taken the materially lower chance of getting the hit, well, at least I would have still been alive, and if the Marut comes after me, I can do it all again. And it would have taken an order. So, was that the right call? I don't know. Was attacking the right call? I don't know. I used up a lot of resources, and I had a shot at kind of just locking the game down in a big way, but it didn't pan out. And those things don't. You take the risk. Sometimes it happens. It was still a fairly good attack run. I killed Penthesilea. I got an objective myself, but the game is in sort of a fundamentally even state, apart from the fact that I've done a lot of damage over here. So, on Dion's turn, what does he do? Well, he's cleaned off sort of everything here. The Sakiel is down. And so he goes basically to kind of recover the situation and get a bit further ahead. So the post-human Yudbot, who is an engineer, I'll remind you, comes around, picks up Penny's objective to get it out of harm's way, moves up here onto a ladder, and recovers the engineer, recovers the other post-human. It can now activate, and it goes after the McCall, who trades his life for it. So the McCall dies, but it burns the post-human to death. Frankly, that's a little bit lucky on my part. It's very easy for a no-wounding cap with any armor at all to pass one of those flamethrower saves, so the fact that it died was a great relief, because having to kill it would have been a huge pain. But the McCall is down, which means that basically all of my forces in this area are now gone. That then lets the Danavis make a run, and she's looking to just get more objectives in play. There are not really the specialists around for Dion to go after the objective that is sort of over here. And there's a mine, in any case, that's sort of sitting there watching it, thanks to the Libertos. So he's looking to do his classified. He's secured one objective. He's going to get table position, recover things where he's basically rebuild his position. And the Danavis comes around, double spotlights my HVT, and then moves up to take a face-to-face roll with my Kameo line infantry. Now, it's a little weird what happens at this point. The Danavis has a breaker pistol and a combi rifle, and he fires with a breaker pistol. And Dion is genuinely one of the most, he is probably the best intuitive player, intuition-based player I have ever seen in Infinity. We were finished incredibly quickly. He just plays super smooth. He just makes a decision and go. He is id personified. There is no, he will notice if he's making a mistake and correct it halfway through an order sometimes, but he just plays, and he plays smooth. But every now and again when you do that, you will make a decision that is intuitive but wrong, which is firing a breaker pistol rather than a combi rifle at any model, almost, just about, right? Especially, I think, an Arm 1, whether it's Arm 1 BTS 3 or Arm 1 BTS 0, I actually know Tohaa line infantry stats. Armor is lower than BTS. Combat rifle has higher damage, higher burst, better range. Fire the combat rifle. Not sure what he was doing there. Little mistake. It happens. Either way, the Kamel survives and actually puts the Danavis down. So I've gotten 1 kill in ARO. At this point, I'm going into my second turn, and I'm feeling okay. I am nominally up on attrition. I'm down most of a Link team, but I'm certainly down fewer points than Dion is. And it's time basically to get ahead. I've got 1 thing, he's got 1 thing, let's get the third. So this is the turn for this Link team. Unfortunately, I need to spend about 35 burst killing a pair of Flash Pulse remotes at bad range for them. Dion is apparently capable of rolling armor rolls like he is God, and to put down these 2 remotes requires an ungodly amount of firepower, which kind of stalls me out a little bit. It's a bit rough. I am nevertheless able to get the rest of the team forward and pick up this objective and pull back, but that's literally it. That's basically my entire turn, is killing 2 almost entirely invincible Armor 0 remotes, trying to Flash Pulse me from like 28 inches away. That kind of sucks, but progress is progress, and I am also able to just, with the group 2 orders, just kind of like wheedle this delegate forward and isolate the Myrmidian. Isolating the Myrmidian is nice, it's hardly critical, but it does mean it's an order he can't consolidate into a combat group, and more importantly, it puts the delegate in a position that's going to be very, very useful in about a turn's time. So Dion goes into his third turn. Basically, I have 2 boxes, he has 1, he needs to do something about that. But he still has a Marut, so he's going to Marut the shit out of me. At this point, in terms of the strong point that I have over here, the sniper is still prone, the Kamel is still there, and my lieutenant has wielded its way forward, prone to there. So around comes the Marut, basically goes on a long brr 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 brr, and it gets to there with a few orders left. And at this point, I suffer another small but critical failure, which is that the Marut moves through zone of control of the tack wheel, and I respond with Mirror Ball. This is super powerful, by the way. I forget to do this in Game 5, and it costs me, but I try to do it here. You need a 14, and you can place anywhere in your zone of control a smoke grenade that is Eclipse against this oncoming MSV2 tag. My plan was to place it basically here, which functionally renders both the officer and the Kamel totally safe against the Marut, because she has to stop and take a long order to intuitive attack flamethrower, which you can, dodge, whatever. Like, it makes her attack hugely more inefficient. But I whiff it, which sucks, because now she comes around and she lights him up with the HMG, and then she moves around and she lights the Kael'tar up with the HMG, and then she moves and picks up the objective. She does not kill the officer. She puts him unconscious, and she does not have enough orders to put him out of his misery. But he's only Fizz 10 and he flubs his regen roll and dies. My next turn would have been much simpler if he had lived. So, what do we have? Well, it's the end of Dion's turn. It's the end of the game. It's my final turn. There is a Marut standing here, looking in approximately this direction, holding a supply box. There is a Yudbot here, holding a supply box, and I'm holding a supply box over here. And I do not have a lot of orders left. But I figure out a plan. The first step is this delegate. She's in group 2. She has 3 orders to spend. She has hers, the Chaxas, and the Nichols. She moves around here, up to there with 1 order. She moves up to the stairwell with another order. And then she spends 2 orders applying a razor to the posthuman. Among other things, this puts the posthuman in what is effectively a null state. It's considered a casualty because if there are no posthumans not isolated, or if there are no posthumans that are not either not dead or in a null state, the rules for the posthuman cover that basically. Erasing a posthuman is very, very effective. The main thing it does, though, is that it disconnects this Yudbot who is carrying a supply box, which means that I can then take this motorized bounty hunter and move 40 inches or thereabouts across the table, up some ladders, and I take the box from the Yudbot. At this point, I am left with 3 orders, but I am winning. I am winning the game. I have 2 boxes and Dion has 1. I can stop here if I want. but I conceive of a play that might get me one more point. It is accidentally the wrong plan and accidentally the right plan. In my head, I'm thinking of the old supplies/beacons rule, where a beacon moves with a trooper and you control it if you're the only person with any models in base contact with it. That is not how the current edition of supplies works. A trooper that is carrying a supply box is marked as carrying the box, but the box itself is just a marker. What happens in supplies is that you are not considered to be controlling the box if someone is engaging you, if they are struggling with the box for you effectively. My plan is to have this triad stand up, run forward, and just touch the box that the Marut is carrying. I will dodge several flamethrowers, and most of them will get burned to death, but one of them makes it just into contact with the box and the Marut. I'm not trying to contact the Marut, but it's basically the only way to get where I need to go to touch the box as well. As it happens, that is accidentally the right thing to do, because all I needed to do was touch the Marut, not the box. So I played it wrong, but accidentally right. And so with the death of this triad, basically, with this triad of a wounded Suquail and two Kael'tar specialists basically saying, all right, boys, over the top, we're going in, storming their way down and around there, most of them getting burned to death, and one of them crash tackling the Marut. I mean, it means that Dion is not controlling that supply box. I'm not controlling it either, but I get the 1 point for him not controlling any boxes, which puts me in total on 6 to his 2, having sustained by far the most casualties of any game of this event so far. It does, nevertheless, mean that I am on a winning record on all majors going into the end of the day, which means that I'm in competition. I'm on my path still to the finals on day 2. There will be 2 games to come, and the next one will once again be against Vanilla Aleph. Stay tuned for that.